A gravel road narrows until the trees are close enough to touch on both sides. At the end of it, a dirt path worn into the ground by years of tires now growing over with grass. At the end of that path, a clearing, and in the clearing, a small house that no one was supposed to know about. Pale blue on one side, unfinished on three more, no steps, no door, a window at the back with only plastic sheeting over the frame. A young woman peels it back and climbs through. Inside, one finished room, white walls, a wood floor, a cot with a folded wool blanket. Under the cot, the edge of a notebook. She pulls it out, opens to the first page, 7 words in block letters. She reads them twice before she understands what her father spent every Saturday doing for 7 years, in secret. The morning Boyd showed up, June was still trying to figure out which boxes could wait. 3 weeks after the funeral, and she was in her father's apartment doing the only thing she knew how to do when the feeling got too large to hold. She was being practical, moving, putting one foot in front of the other the way Ward had always told her problems got solved, not by looking at the whole thing, by finding the next step. The lease was in Ward's name. The landlord had given her 30 days. She had a part-time job at a gas station that paid $11 an hour and an apartment in Garner with nothing on the walls because she had never bothered to hang anything because she had assumed she would not be there long enough for it to matter. She had been right about that, at least. She heard the diesel engine before she saw the truck. She knew the sound. She had grown up listening to that engine, her father's truck, except it was not her father's truck anymore. It had been her father's truck until the morning a stranger called from a construction site in the next county over and told her what the paramedics said. Heart attack. The stairs. He was 52 years old. The paramedics said it was fast. June had sat with the phone in her hand for a long time after she hung up. She had not known what to do next. She had never not known what to do next in her life. Ward had raised her to be the kind of person who found the next step, always. Except the next step here was impossible to identify because there was no instruction for this. There was no manual. There was no Ward and June specific protocol for what happened when the person who had taught you how to get through everything was the thing you had to get through. She had gotten through it the way she got through everything, by moving, by being practical. The truck backed into the parking lot. June watched from the kitchen window. Boyd Calloway, Ward's brother, Ward's older brother, the man who showed up at the funeral late and stood in the back with his arms crossed and had not spoken to June before or after, the man who Ward mentioned maybe twice a year in ways that implied distance but not hostility. They were brothers. That was what June knew. Brothers with gaps between them the size of decades. She met him at the door. "What are you doing here?" Boyd didn't look at her. He walked past her into the apartment, straight to the back room where Ward kept his tools. "Your daddy owed me $4,000, he said. I'm collecting. He never mentioned owing you anything." "Well, he did." June stood in the doorway and watched him put a rolling toolbox onto a dolly. The Milwaukee drill, the table saw, the welding rig Ward had saved for 2 years to buy, 3 trips, then the truck keys off the hook by the door. Then he came back for the kitchen table. He said he had built it himself 15 years ago and was just taking it back. June stood in the living room with her arms wrapped around herself and did not move. Boyd paused on his last trip out. He looked at the bookshelf, the worn leather Bible sitting between a stack of utility bills and a coffee mug with a chipped rim. "You can keep your daddy's church stuff," he said. Then he left. She heard the truck pull out of the parking lot. She sat on the floor, not because her knees gave, just because the floor was there and there was nowhere else. The apartment felt exactly the way it looked, gutted, bare walls, empty corners where things had been. Her father's life was in the back of Boyd Calloway's trailer, and she did not have papers saying otherwise, and she did not have a lawyer, and she had $53 in her checking account, and she had 30 days before the landlord needed this apartment back. She sat on the floor until past midnight. Then she got up. She made instant coffee with water she heated in the microwave because Boyd had taken the kettle too. She sat at the strip of laminate screwed to the wall that served as a counter. She pulled the Bible toward her. She was not religious. Ward hadn't been either, not really, but he had kept this Bible on the shelf her whole life, and she had seen him open it sometimes, late at night, turning pages slowly, looking for something specific. She had always assumed it was comfort, the way people turn to specific things when the weight got heavy. She opened it. The spine cracked, pages thin and translucent, edges soft from years of handling. Between Psalms and Proverbs, a piece of paper folded twice. She almost missed it. The paper was so thin it blended into the pages. She unfolded it slowly. A deed, stamped by the county clerk's office, dated 7 years ago, 2 acres, lot 14 Miller Creek Road. The name on it was Thomas Ward Calloway. The purchase price was $340. June read it 3 times. Her father had owned land, 2 acres of something 40 miles north of Garner, for 7 years, and he had never said a word. She turned the page. Behind the deed, a second piece of paper, a hand-drawn map, Ward's block lettering marking distances, the town of Ridley circled twice in pen, an arrow pointing east, a road labeled Miller Creek Road, a small X, and next to it 14. She sat with the deed in her hands until the coffee went cold. 7 years. Every Saturday morning, he had kissed her forehead and told her he was picking up side work. She had assumed he was hanging cabinets or reframing somebody's garage. He came home tired every Saturday evening with sawdust in his hair. She had never asked more than she thought she needed to. 7 years, every Saturday, he had been going somewhere she didn't know about. Whatever was at the end of Miller Creek Road, Ward had been building it. The county connector bus to Ridley cost $14. She was at the stop at 7 in the morning. The bus was mostly empty. A man in work pants, a woman with grocery bags. June sat by the window with her backpack on her lap and watched the land change as they went north, the suburbs giving way to smaller towns giving way to just land and road and the occasional mailbox. Ridley was not small. It was smaller than small. One main street with a hardware store, a diner, a Baptist church, and a post office. The kind of place where people noticed you if they hadn't seen you before. June walked into the hardware store because it was the only building with an open sign. A man behind the counter looked up from a newspaper. 60s, big through the shoulders, reading glasses pushed up on his forehead. The name on his apron said, Alton. Help you find something. I'm looking for Miller Creek Road. June said it steadily. Do you know where it is? Alton set down his paper. He studied her face for a long moment. You Thomas's girl, June, felt the ground shift under her feet. You knew my father, knew him for 7 years, came in every Saturday morning like clockwork. He took off his reading glasses and folded them carefully. I heard he passed. I'm real sorry. Thank you. June swallowed. I found a deed. Land on Miller Creek Road. I didn't know he owned anything. Alton nodded slowly. Something moved across his face that she couldn't quite read. Miller Creek is about 4 miles east, he said. You take this road out of town, past the church, hang a left at the fork. Gravel road goes about 2 miles. Lot 14 is on the right. You'll see a break in the tree line. What's there? Alton looked at her for a long time. I think you ought to go see for yourself. She walked 4 miles in sneakers that were already wearing thin. The afternoon was warm, early April, dogwoods blooming along the roadside, past the church, past the fork, onto a gravel road that narrowed as the trees pressed in on both sides. 2 miles of gravel. Her feet ached, her backpack dug into her shoulders. She counted mailboxes. There were 2, both rusted, both for lots that looked abandoned. Then she saw the break in the tree line, a dirt path just wide enough for a truck, tire tracks worn into the ground from years of use, now growing over with grass. 3 weeks of no one driving in. She turned onto the path. It curved through a stand of pines maybe 100 yards. Then the trees opened. June stopped. In the middle of the clearing, on a slight rise, sat a structure. Not a ruin, not a shack. A house. Small, unfinished, but a house. The frame was solid, real lumber, not the cheap composite stuff. The roof was complete. Dark shingles, straight lines, 3 walls fully sheathed, one side finished in clapboard siding painted a pale blue that made her chest do something unexpected. The front had a framed-out porch with no railing yet and no steps, just raw lumber suspended 3 feet off the ground. She walked toward it. Her legs felt strange. The front door was a piece of plywood with a padlock. She reached up and tugged it. Locked. She walked around the side through knee-high grass, past a stack of lumber under a tarp, past a wheelbarrow turned upside down. At the back a window, no glass yet, plastic sheeting stapled to the frame. She peeled it back and looked inside. 1 room, completely finished. Drywall painted a soft white. A wood floor sanded smooth. A window on the east wall with actual glass, looking toward where the morning sun would come. A cot against the far wall with a folded wool blanket. A plastic bin with a camp stove on top. A lantern on a shelf that was mounted at exactly her height. She looked at the shelf. She looked at the height of it. Her hands felt cold. She climbed through the window. The room smelled like sawdust and pine and something underneath that she recognized without being able to name it immediately. Then she placed it. Old Spice and lumber, her father's jacket, the smell of every Saturday he had come home. She stood in the middle of the finished room and pressed her hands to her face. Under the cot, she could see the edge of a notebook, a spiral-bound composition book, the kind Ward used to keep for his jobs. She knelt and pulled it out. The cover was stained with paint and coffee rings. She opened it to the first page. Thomas Ward Calloway. Ward's block letters, all capitals, the way he always wrote. June's house. Started March 2017. She turned the page. Measurements, lists, costs broken down to the penny. Cedar siding $87, roofing nails $12, window unit east bedroom $41 used, and between the building notes scattered throughout like they had come to him while he was working, messages. Page 4, east window for June's room. She said she wanted to wake up with the sun. This was when she was 6. I have not forgotten. Page 11, porch will face south. Big enough for 2 chairs. She'll want a dog someday. She doesn't know it yet, but she will. Page 19. Kitchen almost framed. Small but enough. She doesn't need big. She needs hers. June sat on her father's cot and read his notebook until the light through the east window turned gold, then orange, then faded to nothing. She didn't have a flashlight. She didn't have a phone charger. She had $53, a backpack, a deed, and a half-built house her father had been building in secret for 7 years. She pulled the wool blanket around her shoulders, It smelled like him. Then she heard it, something moving in the grass outside, a soft sound, careful feet, then a shape at the window where the plastic sheeting still hung half open from where she had climbed through. A dog, medium size, tawny brown with a darker saddle across his back, down the center of his face from the crown of his head to the tip of his nose, a clean white blaze. His right ear stood straight up with a small notch at the tip, old and healed over. His left ear folded forward at the tip. His eyes were amber, the deep honey color of old glass held up to light. He was thin, ribs visible through the short fur, a strip of faded rope around his neck. He stood at the window and looked at her with dark, cautious eyes. June didn't move. The dog stayed. After a long time, he climbed through the window, walked 3 careful circles in the corner of the room, lay down. She watched him settle. He had climbed through that window like he knew the way, like he had done it before. She looked at the dog. The dog looked at her. "You knew him too," she said. The dog put his head on his paws and closed his eyes. June pulled the blanket tighter. Through the east window she could see stars, more stars than she had ever seen from the apartment in Garner. The silence was so deep it had weight. She opened the notebook again and held it close enough to read by faint light. Page 23, the last entry, dated 2 weeks before Ward died. Almost done. 4 more months. Going to give it to her on her 21st. She'll argue with me about it. She'll say it's too much, but she needs to know what she's worth. She needs to know. I saw her every day. I saw her. June closed the notebook. She held it against her chest. She lay down on the cot in the dark room her father had built in the house he had never had the chance to finish, on the land he had bought for $340 in the 7th year before she was born, in any version of herself that knew it existed. The dog breathed softly in the corner. Outside, the pines moved in whatever wind was passing through the clearing. She made a decision. She woke to sunlight in her face. For 3 seconds she did not know where she was. Then she smelled the sawdust. The dog was gone. The plastic sheeting over the back window hung still. June sat up and looked around the finished room in full daylight. It was different with the sun coming through the east window. The walls were painted evenly, no drips, no mist spots. The wood floor was sanded smooth. In the corner, a shelf held 3 cans of beans, a box of matches, and a jar of peanut butter with the lid screwed on tight. Emergency supplies. Her father had stocked this room like he expected someone to show up with nothing. She ate peanut butter on her fingers and drank water from a jug she found under the camp stove. Then she heard the truck, old green pickup, coming slowly up the dirt path. It stopped at the edge of the clearing. A woman got out, 70s, small, silver hair cut short and flat, flannel shirt tucked into jeans, boots that had seen years of mud. She stood by her truck and studied the house for a moment. Then she looked at June. "Well," she said, "I was wondering when you'd show up." June stepped off the low edge of the porch. "Who are you?" "Bess Garner. I live about half a mile east." She pointed past the tree line. "Been watching this property since your daddy stopped coming 3 weeks ago. Knew something was wrong. Heard from Alton what happened. Alton at the hardware store. Only Alton in town." Bess walked closer. She moved with the careful steadiness of someone whose body had started making demands her mind didn't agree with. She looked at June the way people looked when they were seeing someone for the first time and recognizing something familiar at the same time. "You look just like him," she said. "Same jaw, same way of standing with your arms crossed like that." June uncrossed her arms. Bess stopped a few feet away and looked at the house. Something softened in her face. He was close, she said. Another few months, maybe. You knew what he was doing. I knew he was building. She paused. First year or so, I thought he was a hunter. Then I saw the lumber deliveries. Then the roof going on. I brought him coffee one morning. Maybe year 3, just walked over with a thermos. He didn't want to explain. At first, Bess said. After a while, he did. Told you what? She looked at June. That he was building a house for his daughter. That you'd had some rough years after your mother left, and he wanted you to have a place that was yours. Not rented, not borrowed, yours. He looked at Bess's face and said something soft was happening there. He said he was going to give it to you when you turned 21. Had it all planned. Figured you'd need a couple years after high school to figure out what you wanted. By then it would be done and he'd drive you up here and hand you the key. He didn't make it. No, June said. He didn't. They stood in the clearing for a while. The dog had reappeared from the direction of the tree line and was now sitting near June's feet, watching. Is that Scout? Bess said. That's not the name. Bess shook her head. Your daddy named him Jasper. Stray showed up about 2 years ago. Skinny little thing. Thomas started leaving food out every Saturday. Built a shelter out of scrap wood over there. She pointed to a lean-to near the tree line. A plywood box with a tarp roof. June hadn't seen it on her walk-in. Jasper would follow him around the property all day, Bess said. Carry screws in his mouth sometimes. Your daddy used to say he was the best assistant he ever had. June looked down at the dog. Jasper looked back. Come on, Bess said. You need real breakfast. Bess's house was white clapboard on a cleared lot half a mile down a side path off the gravel road. Porch that wrapped around 3 sides. The kitchen smelled like coffee and bacon and something baking. Bess put a plate in front of June without asking what she wanted. Scrambled eggs, toast, 2 strips of bacon, a glass of orange juice. June ate like she hadn't eaten in days, which was close to true. How much do you know about the property? Bess asked from across the table. Just what's on the deed. 2 acres. Your daddy bought it at a county tax auction 7 years ago. $340. Previous owner had died. No heirs. Taxes unpaid. It was listed as a hunting parcel with a condemned structure. Old hunting cabin from the 50s, rotted through when Thomas bought it. He tore it down to the foundation and started over. He never told me. He never told anyone except me and Alton because Alton was selling him the materials. Bess set her coffee down. Your daddy was a proud man, June. Not the bad kind of proud. The kind where he didn't want credit for doing what he thought was his job. Providing for you was his job. He didn't need you to know about it until it was done. But it's not done. No. Bess paused. But it's close. Closer than you might think. After breakfast, Bess drove June back to the property. They walked through the house together. Bess pointed out things June had missed. The electrical was complete and up to code. Thomas had a friend inspect it 2 years ago. The roof was solid. 20-year shingles. The well pump was new installed last summer. What's left is finishing work, Bess said. Plumbing needs to be connected. Hot water heater. Drywall in the 2nd bedroom. Flooring. Paint. The porch railing and steps. She paused. That's not nothing. But it's not framing a house either. The hard part is done. June stood in the kitchen and turned slowly. The cabinets Ward had built. Pine sanded smooth sealed but not painted. A pencil line on the countertop edge where he had planned to set the surface. A window over the sink looking out at the tree line. He had put a window over the sink. She stood and looked at it. A window over a sink meant someone standing there would have something to look at. It was a detail you only added if you were thinking about the person. if you were thinking about them standing at that sink for years. She looked at the window over the sink, and she understood something she had not understood before. Ward had not built a house. He had built a specific life. Her life. She went back to Alton's hardware store that afternoon. 4 miles. He was behind the counter when she came in. "You found it," he said. "I found it. Sit down." He pulled a stool from behind the counter and set it out for her. Then he poured coffee from a thermos into a paper cup and handed it to her. "Your daddy had a tab here. 7 years." He paused. "He paid every cent of it off 3 months before he passed." Why 3 months before? Because that was how Thomas was. He finished what he started, paid off the tab, then told me he had about 4 more months of work on the house. Said he was going to give it to his daughter on her birthday. Alton paused. He asked me to witness something. June set down her coffee. "Witness what?" Alton reached under the counter and pulled out a manila folder. Inside a single sheet of paper, handwritten, block letters, Ward's handwriting. "I, Thomas Ward Calloway, leave everything I own, including the property at Lot 14 Miller Creek Road, Haines County, North Carolina, to my daughter June Ann Calloway. This includes the land, all structures, tools, materials, and personal property. This is my complete and final intention." Below that, 2 signatures, Alton Shaw, Alma Shaw, a notary seal in the lower right. "Patricia is my wife," Glenn said. "She was here when he asked." "Alma," June said quietly. Alton looked at her. "Sorry, Alma," Alton said. "She was here when Thomas asked. He had it notarized the same week. The notarized copy is filed with the county." June held the paper in both hands. Her father's handwriting, the same block letters from the notebook, from the lists he taped to the refrigerator, from the birthday cards he had given her every year, always signed the same way. "Love, Dad." He knew, June said quietly. He knew something might happen. He knew he worked hard, Alton said, and hard work has a cost. He folded his hands on the counter. He wanted to make sure it got to you and nobody else. He mentioned his brother, said Boyd would come looking if he knew there was anything to take. He came, June said. Alton's jaw tightened. He came. He took everything from the apartment, everything except the Bible. They sat with that for a moment. "I want to finish the house," June said. Alton studied her. "You know how to build, my dad taught me. Basic framing, wiring, how to use a saw. I'm not as good as he was, but I can learn the rest. You have money for materials. I have $53. Alton was quiet. Then he said I could use help around the store. Part-time, stocking deliveries customers. Not glamorous, but it pays $12 an hour, and you'd get materials at cost." June looked at him. "Why would you do that?" "Because your daddy spent 7 years in my store buying nails and lumber and never once asked for a discount. He paid full price every single time, and when I tried to cut him a deal, he said no, said he wanted to earn it." Alton took off his glasses and cleaned them on his shirt. "Least I can do is make sure his daughter has the same chance." June felt her throat tighten. She nodded. "Start Monday," Alton said. 7 to noon. Afternoons are yours." She walked back to the property in the late afternoon light. 4 miles. She was going to know every crack in this gravel road before long. Jasper was waiting at the break in the tree line. He stood when he saw her and walked beside her up the dirt path, not quite touching her leg, but close. Inside the house, June sat on the cot and opened the notebook to a blank page in the back. She found a pencil in the supply bin and wrote her first entry. April 9th. Moved in. Job at Alton starts Monday. Jasper is here. Need hot water heater. Drywall, blue tile, porch lumber, front door, Steps. She looked at it. Then she added one more line. I'm gonna finish what you started, Dad. She set the notebook on the shelf next to the beans and the matches and the peanut butter. Then she lay down on the cot and pulled the wool blanket up and watched the last light fade through the east window. Jasper jumped up and curled against her feet. His weight was warm and steady. Tomorrow she would start. Tonight she would sleep in the room her father built, in the house he never got to finish, on the land he bought with $340 and 7 years of Saturdays. And for the first time in 3 weeks, the silence didn't feel like grief. It felt like the beginning of something. Monday came the way hard things came, without warning, without ceremony, just the alarm on her phone at 6:15 and the east window going from black to gray, and Jasper already awake at the foot of the cot, watching her the way he watched her every morning, like a question waiting for an answer. She laced her boots in the dark. She had 4 miles to cover before 7. The county road had no lights. She walked by feel and by stars, and by the instinct that developed in people who had grown up moving through unfamiliar places and learned to orient by something other than landmarks. The air was cold enough to see her breath, gravel crunching under her feet. By the second mile, her legs had stopped complaining and found their rhythm, and she thought about Ward making this walk in reverse every Saturday evening, coming back to the house after a full day of building, tired in the bones, sawdust in the creases of his hands. He had done it every week for 7 years. She could do 4 miles once. Alton Shaw unlocked the front door at 7 exactly. He looked at her. He looked at her boots. He said, "Coffee's in the back." The work was physical, and her brain could rest while her hands moved. That was the thing about it. You did not have to think to stock shelves. You did not have to think to sweep concrete or sort screws by diameter into their labeled bins or help a man in muddy work pants find the right gauge wire for a baseboard heater. You just had to be present, paying attention to what was in front of you. June had been paying attention her whole life. By the 3rd day, Alton stopped checking behind her. By the 5th day, she was the one showing a new customer where to find the PVC fittings. By the end of the first week, she knew every drawer in the store and had reorganized the specialty hinges section in a way Alton said made more sense than the way he had been doing it for 20 years. He said this while reading his newspaper, did not look up, but she heard the approval in it. Afternoons were for the house. She started with the bathroom because it was the most urgent thing. Ward had run all the pipes, set the toilet flange, stubbed everything through the subfloor, but nothing was connected. She watched tutorial videos on her phone until the signal got patchy. Then she walked back to the house and tried anyway. She got it wrong twice. First time, a joint leaked. She stared at the leak for a full minute. Then she cut the bad section out and started fresh. Second time, she glued a fitting backwards and did not realize it until she tried to connect the next piece and the geometry stopped making sense. She lay under that subfloor for a few minutes looking at what she had done. Jasper was watching from the doorway. "You're not helping," she told him. He wagged. She sawed through the pipe, removed the backwards fitting, started that section again with clean cuts. On the 3rd attempt, everything lined up. She let the cement cure crawled out from under the subfloor, flushed the toilet. Water went where it was supposed to go. She sat on the bathroom floor and laughed. Not from happiness exactly, from relief, from the feeling of having done something wrong twice and right once, and the right once being the version that counted. "That's not nothing," she told Jasper. He put his head on his paws. He seemed to agree. The community came one person at a time, not in a wave, not with fanfare, just a knock at the door, A face she didn't know, a reason that traced back to Ward. Martha Eubanks from the Baptist Church on Miller Creek Road. 60s, flannel shirt, a paper bag in her hand. My husband heard from Alton that Ward Calloway's daughter was out here finishing the house, she said. She set the bag on the counter. Ward helped us re-roof our back porch 3 summers ago. Wouldn't take a cent for it. Said neighbors help neighbors. Inside the bag, 2 cans of soup, a jar of pasta sauce, and curtains, white cotton with a narrow trim, for the east window, Martha said. Alton described the room. I thought you want something on it before winter. June held the curtains for a moment. Thank you, she said. Don't mention it. She was gone in 10 minutes. A retired electrician named Don Briley came to check the panel 2 days later, tightened 2 connections, replaced a breaker rated too low for the kitchen circuit, found nothing else wrong. He stayed for an hour and told June about buying wire off Ward at a yard sale 6 years back. He bought every scrap I had, Don said. 12 gauge, 14, even some old 10 gauge I was about to throw out. Pay me $50 for the lot. I thought he was reselling it. He paused. Turns out he was wiring a house. June looked at the panel. The cables clipped to the studs at even intervals with plastic staples. Neat, methodical. He was careful, she said. Careful is one word for it, Don said. He smiled. Obsessive is another. This is love built into copper wire. I have never in 40 years of this job seen anything like it. Every person who came had a story. Every story was the same story told a different way. A man who showed up, who helped without being asked, who paid full price and called it fair, who was there when things broke, not when things were good. June had known him her whole life as quiet, economical, not withholding exactly, just a man who expressed things through what he did. She was starting to understand him better through strangers than she ever had through proximity. She wrote in the notebook every evening by the lamp on the shelf, page 24, 25, her handwriting beside his, her lists of what she had finished and what remained. She was not as good as he was. She would not pretend otherwise, but she was better at the end of week 2 than she had been at the beginning of week 1. That was something. It was a Tuesday afternoon when Alton asked her to stay after closing. He came out from the back office with a manila folder, set it on the counter, put his glasses on, and looked at it for a moment before he looked at her. Sit down, he said. She sat on the stool. He opened the folder. 1 sheet of paper, handwritten, block letters she would recognize anywhere. I, Thomas Ward Calloway, being of sound mind, leave everything I own, including the property, at Lot 14 Miller Creek Road, Haines County, to my daughter June Ann Calloway. This includes the land, all structures, tools, materials, and personal property. This is my complete and final intention. 2 signatures below his, Alton Shaw, Alma Shaw, a notary seal in the lower right corner. He filed the notarized copy with the county the same week Alton said. 2 years ago, he came in on a Saturday morning, bought finished nails, bought wood glue, and an hour later came back with this and asked if I'd witness it. He had it all prepared, just needed 2 people. He paused. He mentioned his brother, said Boyd had a habit of showing up when there was something to take, said he wanted to make sure there were no gaps. June pressed her hands flat on the counter. She looked at Ward's handwriting. She thought about him driving back up Miller Creek Road that Saturday, getting the signatures, getting back to work, not saying anything to anyone, just one more thing completed and set aside for when it was needed. He was always building. Even the legal documents, all of it was building. Boyd arrived 10 days after that. She was on a ladder painting trim around the south side window when she heard the diesel engine. She knew the sound before she processed it. Her hands tightened on the brush. She came down the ladder, set the brush across the paint can, wiped her hands on her jeans. He parked at the edge of the clearing, got out, looked at the house for a long time. The look of a man running numbers. "What is this?" he said. "My house." Boyd walked closer, looked at the roof line, the siding. "Ward built this. Ward started it. I'm finishing it. On whose land? His land. There's a deed. His name. Bought 7 years ago." Boyd's face moved through something. Not anger yet. The thing before anger when someone realizes their math was wrong. He never mentioned property. He never mentioned a lot of things. Boyd looked at the clearing, at the workshop, at the firewood stacked in split rows against the north wall. He said, "An asset like this, land and a structure, Dad would have wanted us to share." "There's a will," June said. Boyd stopped, signed, witnessed, notarized, filed with the county. "Everything he owned goes to me. The land, the house, all of it." She watched him find the edge of it. "I'll get a lawyer. Get one." Her voice was steady, steadier than she had expected from herself. "The deed is in his name only. The will is clear. 2 witnesses and a notary. You want to spend money fighting that, go ahead, but you won't win." Boyd stood in the clearing for a long moment. She could see him looking for the angle, the leverage point, the way in. She could also see the moment he understood there wasn't one. He looked at the house one more time, something in his face that was not anger and not grief. Maybe somewhere underneath all the calculation, something closer to recognition, like a man seeing clearly for the first time what his brother had been doing with those 7 years of Saturdays. "He should have told me," he said. His voice was quieter now. "We were brothers. You took everything he had and left me with a Bible," June said. Boyd looked at the ground. Then he turned and walked back to the truck. He had his hand on the door when he stopped and looked back at her. "You look like him," he said, standing like that, just like him. He got in. He drove away. June stood in the clearing until she could not hear the engine anymore. Her hands were shaking, not from fear, from the specific exhaustion of holding a line hard and then releasing it. Jasper pressed against her leg. She put her hand on his head. "We're all right," she said. "He's gone." The call came from Loretta 9 days later, a number she didn't know. She picked up on the 4th ring. "Is this June?" "Yes." "This is Loretta, Boyd's wife." A pause. "I'm sorry to call like this, out of nowhere. I just needed you to know what he did was wrong. Coming to the apartment, coming to your property." She paused again. "I told him so. I've told him a lot of things recently." June sat on the porch frame. "I appreciate the call," she said. "I knew your daddy a little," Loretta said. "Not well, but enough to know what he was. The kind of man that comes along once in a while and doesn't make noise about it." She stopped. "I'm sorry you lost him." June looked at the tree line. The afternoon light was long and gold through the pines. "Thank you," June said. She meant it completely. Loretta said, "Take care of yourself." She hung up. Deke Lane came on a Thursday. Big man, mid-40s, hands that told the story of 20 years of pipe work without anyone needing to say a word. He walked through the house and inspected everything. Ward's original work, June's additions. He had a flashlight and a pressure gauge and the focus of someone who understood that the things hidden in walls were more important than the things you could see. He found 2 spots in June's work that needed reinforcement. He found 3 spots in Ward's work that were better than what he saw in new construction. Your daddy, Deke said, tightening something under the kitchen sink. He was the careful kind. He triple-checked things most contractors do once. He stood up. He looked at the kitchen window. He was thinking about the person, Deke said, not just the building. June looked at the window, at the tree line beyond it. Yeah, she said. He was. Deke did not take money. June tried. He said if she wanted to pay him back, she could help his wife plant bulbs in the fall. June wrote it down. She was building a list in the back pages of Ward's notebook, a column of names and debts. She had never been in the habit of letting things go unpaid. Ward had not raised her that way. Something else he had not said out loud, just lived. She found the pocket on a Wednesday night. She had been reading the notebook by the lamp Ward had mounted at exactly her height. She had been through it dozens of times. The building notes, the costs, the measurements, and the other things, the ones between the building notes that were not about joints or lumber or square footage. She was at the back cover when her thumbnail caught something, a ridge. She brought the notebook under the lamp, a slit in the cardboard, cut clean, pressed nearly flat. She would not have found it if she had not been running her hand along the edge. She opened the pocket, 2 envelopes, pressed thin, both sealed. The handwriting on both was not Ward's, smaller, more careful, round in a way that took time, a woman's handwriting. Both envelopes had the same word on the front, Thomas, which was Ward's given name, which almost no one used. June set both envelopes on the cot, looked at them. Her chest was doing something she did not have a name for. Not fear exactly. The thing that came before knowing. When your body understood something your brain had not yet processed. She picked up the first envelope. Inside thin lined paper, torn from a legal pad, the same careful handwriting, a date at the top, 11 years ago. Thomas, I know you won't write back. I know you're angry and you have every right, but I need you to know why I left. Because June deserves the truth even if she never hears it from me. I was diagnosed in February, multiple sclerosis. My neurologist said I had early-stage primary progressive MS, the kind that does not go into remission, the kind that takes things slowly, incrementally, permanently. I was 27 years old. I had a 3-year-old daughter who needed a mother who could carry her, who could run with her, who could be steady for her in the ways that mattered for years to come. I could be that mother now, for a while, but I watched my own mother decline from a different illness. I watched what it did to us as her children. To love someone who is disappearing, to grieve them before they are gone. I promised myself I would never put a child of mine through that. I know what you'll say. You'll say she needed me anyway. You'll say present and sick is better than absent and gone. Maybe you're right. I have asked myself that every single day. But I left because I loved her, not because I didn't. The hardest thing I have ever done was leave. The second hardest thing was staying gone. Please don't tell her about the MS. Let her be angry at me for leaving. Anger is easier to carry than pity. I know this from experience. I'm sorry, Thomas, for every part of this. Eleanor. June read it twice, 3 times. The words stayed steady on the page. Her hands were steady. Her breathing was steady. But something inside her was not. 15 years. She had carried a specific story for 15 years, a story with a specific shape. Her mother had left because she had not wanted to stay, because something about the situation, about the life, about June herself, had been insufficient, not worth staying for. She had filled that blank with the worst possible version because no one had offered another. That story was not true. That story had never been true. Her mother was sick. Her mother had been 27 years old and had looked at a life with a progressive neurological disease and had made a decision June did not agree with, a decision that had cost her 15 years of believing a wrong thing, but a decision made from love, complicated love, flawed love, love that had arrived at the wrong conclusion through wrong reasoning, but love. June set the first letter on the cot. She did not pick up the second envelope yet. She sat with the first one, with what it contained, letting it change shape inside her, the way large things change shape slowly, not collapsing all at once, settling. Jasper moved from the corner to the cot, pressed against her side, warm and heavy. She put her hand on his head. He did not move. She picked up the second envelope. This paper was different, newer, the handwriting the same but harder, a hand fighting for control over each letter. Thomas, it's been 6 years since my last letter, and I don't know if you read it, but I'm writing because I want you to know where I am, in case something happens to me, in case June ever wants to find out. I'm at the Greenfield Care Center in Kingsport, Virginia, room 212. My legs stopped being reliable last year. My right hand is slower, but I can still write if I go carefully. I heard through your Aunt Bet that June graduated high school. I cried for a very long time. I am so proud of her. I am so proud of you for raising her right. I also heard a rumor through people who know other people that you've been building something. I don't know what or where, but if it's for June, you are a better parent than I was ever brave enough to be. I don't expect a response. I don't expect anything. I gave up expecting things when I walked out that door. But if June ever asks, you can tell her or not. That's your choice. I gave you that choice when I left. I love her. I have loved her every single day since I walked out of that apartment. That has not changed. That will not change. Eleanor. June folded the second letter. She put both of them back in their envelopes. She placed them side by side on the cot. 2 letters, 6 years apart. A woman writing into silence, asking for nothing, not expecting to hear back. Her mother was in Kingsport, Virginia, room 212. Kingsport was less than 4 hours from Ridley, less than 4 hours from this house, from this east window. June sat on the cot for a long time, Jasper breathing against her side, the lamp throwing its circle of light on the shelf Ward had mounted at her height. The anger was still there. She was not going to pretend it wasn't. 15 years was a long time to be wrong about something, to carry a wrong story in your body like it was the truth. You did not let go of 15 years in one evening, but the shape of it had changed. It had been a wall. Now it was something with edges she could walk around, something she could see from different angles without it looking back. She put the letters in the hidden pocket. She put the notebook on the shelf. She lay down on the cot with her face toward the east window. Dark now, pines against the sky, the same stars she had watched every night since she arrived. Jasper settled at her feet, his weight across her ankles. She was not done. There was still the second bedroom, the exterior paint, the front porch steps, the door, and there was Kingsport, Virginia, room 212, which she was not ready for tonight, which she was also not going to stop thinking about. She closed her eyes. Ward had built this room so she could wake up with morning light. She was going to wake up with morning light. One board, one nail, one day. She did not open the notebook for 3 days. She worked. She went to Alton's in the mornings and stocked shelves and swept the floor and helped customers find what they needed. She came back in the afternoons and worked on the house. She connected the kitchen faucet, she sanded the second bedroom walls, she fixed the gap under the back door where the wind was coming in. She did all of this, and she did not think about the letters, except she thought about them all the time. That was the nature of large information. You could not unknow it. You could set it aside and pick it up and set it aside again, but it was always there at the edge of every thought, changing the light on everything. Her mother had not left because she did not want her. Her mother had left because she was sick and afraid of being watched while she disappeared. June understood this the way you understood things that were both completely clear and completely complicated at the same time. The understanding did not mean agreement. The understanding did not dissolve 15 years, but the shape of it was different. That was the most honest thing she could say. On the fourth morning, she opened the notebook before work, turned to a blank page. She wrote 4 days since the letters, still thinking, don't know what to do yet. Second bedroom needs drywalling. Start there. She set the pencil down. She looked at what she had written. That was Ward in her, the pivot to the practical when the feeling became too large to hold directly. Some things were taught, some things were inherited, sometimes the difference was impossible to measure. Boyd came back on a Saturday morning in late October. She was on the porch with her coffee, watching the tree line go from gray to gold when she heard the truck on the gravel road. She recognized the engine. She had been waiting for it if she was honest, not hoping for it, just knowing the way you knew some things without wanting to know them, that he would come back. He parked at the edge of the clearing. He sat in the truck for a long time. She watched him through her coffee steam. He got out eventually. He had lost weight since she had seen him last. His clothes were the kind of wrinkled that meant something had changed about his daily life. He had not shaved in several days. He walked to the base of the porch and stopped. There were no steps yet. The porch was 3 feet off the ground with nothing to climb. He stood below her looking up. I'm not here about the property, he said. June wrapped both hands around her mug. She waited. Boyd looked at the ground, at the porch, at the tree line, anywhere that was not her face. Loretta left me, he said, 3 weeks ago, said I was mean and getting meaner and she wasn't going to wait around for it to get worse. He kicked at the gravel. She's not wrong. June said nothing. She had nothing to say yet. Boyd said, I've been thinking about your daddy, about what I did when he died, the apartment, the tools. He finally looked at her. His eyes were red-rimmed. He owed me nothing. You understand that he never owed me a cent. I made it up. June was quiet. I know, she said. His face changed. I know you know. I just needed to say it out loud. His voice broke at the edge of the last word. He cleared his throat. Your daddy never said no to me. Not once in 30 years. Every time I called, he showed up. Every time I needed money, he found it. I never paid him back. Not once. I never said thank you. Not once in 30 years. The clearing was quiet. A woodpecker somewhere in the pines. Jasper's breathing from behind June, where he lay on the porch boards. Boyd said I sold the welding rig. Got a fair price. I can give you that money. Keep it. He stared at her. Keep the money, Boyd. I don't want it. I don't need it. He looked at her the way people sometimes looked at her lately, like they were seeing something they had not expected, something that reminded them of someone. You sound like him, he said. Turning down money. Same stubborn thing. She did not respond to that. She looked at the porch frame, the gap where the steps needed to go, the lumber she had been meaning to cut for 2 weeks. You want to help, she said. Boyd blinked. Help how I need steps. 3 of them. I have the lumber. Know how to use a saw. Boyd looked at the lumber. At the Gap, at June, he looked like a man who had just been offered something he was not sure he deserved. Yeah, he said, I know how to use a saw. They worked for 3 hours. They did not talk much. Boyd measured the stringers while June cut the treads. He was good with the saw. His hands remembered things even when the rest of him had forgotten them. They fell into the kind of working silence Ward had always kept on job sites, where the work did the talking and nothing else needed saying right then. When the steps were done solid and level, Boyd sat on the bottom one and drank water from the bottle June gave him. He built all this himself, Boyd said, looking at the house, most of it, 7 years, 7 years. Boyd shook his head slowly. I didn't know he had it in him. I mean, I knew he was good with his hands, but this, he was quiet for a moment. He said, it's love, isn't it? That's what this is. June looked at the house. She had been circling that word for weeks, trying to find a name for something that a man had built alone for 7 years without telling anyone. Yeah, she said, that's what it is. Boyd sat on the bottom step for another minute. Then he stood. I should go. He glanced east toward the tree line. That woman, Bess, she's got a railing that needs work. June looked at him. How did you know about her railing? I walked by her place when I came in. Stopped to say hello. She told me. He picked up his jacket. I've got cedar already in the truck. Bought it yesterday. Nobody asked you to do that. No. He met her eyes. But your daddy was over here every Saturday for 7 years, and I was nowhere. He was quiet for a moment. That's got to count for something. What I do next. He drove away. June watched the truck disappear down the dirt path. She and Boyd were not friends. She did not know if they would be. That was not something you could decide in advance. It accrued or it didn't over time. But he had built 3 steps, and he was going to fix Bess Garner's railing without being asked, which was exactly the kind of thing Ward would have done, and said nothing about. The house came together the way houses come together when the hard part is already done, not all at once, incrementally, one task replaced by the next. The weeks between Boyd's visit and the end of October were like that. June drywalled the second bedroom. Her first wall looked rough. Her 5th wall looked like someone who had been doing it a while. She found blue tile at a salvage yard. Alton had told her about 40 cents a square foot. She spent a whole Saturday on her knees with a tile cutter and a level laying the pattern Ward had sketched on page 17 of the notebook. The blue he had noted she liked when she was 10 years old. She had not remembered saying that. He had remembered. She put down every tile the way he would have put it down, measuring twice, setting it once, grout lines even. The kitchen got its countertop, butcher block which Alton sold her at cost. She sanded it, sealed it with mineral oil, mounted it on the cabinets Ward had built. When she stood at the sink and ran water and looked out the window at the tree line, she understood something she had been approaching from the outside for weeks. Ward had not built a house. He had built a specific life, her life, the one he had been watching her live and quietly designing around for a decade. Alton came out on a Wednesday afternoon with a can of paint. She was sanding the porch railing Boyd had built when she saw his truck coming up the dirt path. He climbed out with a paper bag in one hand and a paint can in the other. He set the can on the railing. Found this in the back room, he said. Somebody returned it last year. Wrong color for their project. Been sitting on the return shelf ever since. June looked at the can. The label said the color name, a pale specific blue, the color of a winter sky just after the gray burned off, the color of clear water in certain light, the color she had pointed at in a magazine in a waiting room when she was 10 years old and said without thinking much about it that she liked. She looked at Alton. "How much?" He waved his hand. "It's been there a year. Take it." She turned the can over in her hands. "Your dad bought a can of the same color about 4 months before he passed," Alton said, "for the bedroom. He brought it back the next week because he wasn't happy with the drywall texture yet. Said he wanted to wait until it was perfect." He paused. "When this one came in as a return, I set it aside. Figured eventually you'd want it." June held the can. It was heavy in her hands. She thought about Ward in Alton's store, 4 months before he died, buying this exact color, taking it home, deciding the wall was not ready, bringing it back, not giving up, just waiting for the right moment, because the right moment mattered to him, because everything had to be right. "Thank you," she said. Alton turned back to his truck, but she could see the corner of his mouth. She painted the bedroom that afternoon. She started at the ceiling edge and worked down, cutting in around the window trim. The east window. She painted around it carefully, saved it for last. When she finally rolled paint over the wall around the east window frame, she stopped and looked at the wall. The color was exactly right. Not a color she had named recently, not something she had gone out and chosen, a color she had pointed at once offhandedly as a child, and kept. That was what he had done. He had kept it, filed it somewhere in whatever system he had for knowing her, and years later he had climbed a ladder in this room and marked the walls in pencil and bought the paint. She went back to rolling. She did not stop again. She finished the whole room. She stood in the doorway and looked at what she had done. Blue walls, blue tile, visible through the bathroom doorway down the hall. Morning light coming through the east window even though it was late afternoon and the light was coming from the wrong direction. But she could imagine it. She had been watching it for weeks. The way it came through that window in the first hour after dawn and turned whatever it touched into something warmer than it actually was. She would wake up in this room, in this house, on this land, for years. She pressed both hands flat against the doorframe. Then she went to make coffee. The box was under the cot. She had seen it before and had not registered it properly. Small, wooden. She had assumed it was part of Ward's supply setup. She had been living around it for weeks without thinking about it. She was sweeping the finished bedroom floor on a Thursday evening when she decided to move the cot to sweep under it. She pulled the cot away from the wall. The box sat in the dust where the cot had been. It was not a supply box. Small, wooden, hinged lid, handmade, sanded smooth. On the lid in Ward's block letters burned into the wood, June's house. She set the broom against the wall. She sat down on the floor. She opened the lid. Inside, on a small square of folded cloth, a set of keys. 2 of them, on a plain ring, brass, new-looking, unscratched in the way of keys that had been cut and never used. She picked them up. She crossed to the front door. She put the first key in the lock. It turned. The door swung open. She stood in the doorway with both keys in her hand and the evening coming in around her and the clearing visible ahead and the tree line beyond, and somewhere in the tree line, the lean-to Ward had built for Jasper 3 years ago out of scrap lumber and a tarp. He had cut these keys before the front door was even installed. He had put them in a handmade box with her name burned into the lid. He had been so certain she would be here. He had been so certain she would use them. She closed the door. She turned the deadbolt. The click of a lock in a door she owned. She stood on the porch at the top of Boyd's steps and looked at the clearing in the last light. 2 acres of it. Hers. Ward's 7 years of Saturdays. Hers. She sat down on the top step. Jasper came and sat beside her, his head against her leg, the white blaze on his face catching the last of the light. Right ear up, left ear folded, amber eyes on the tree line. She held the keys in her hand. She stayed like that until it was dark. She wrote the letter to Eleanor on a Friday, not because she was ready, because she had decided that waiting until she was ready was a way of never doing it. And not doing it was a choice too. It was choosing the 15-year story over what she now knew to be true. She sat at Ward's kitchen table, her table now, her kitchen, her house. She found a clean sheet of paper and a pen. She sat with the blank page for a while. Then she wrote, "Dear Eleanor, my name is June. I'm your daughter. I'm 19 years old and I'm writing you from a house my father built in secret on 2 acres of land he bought for $340 7 years ago." She paused. She kept going. "I found your letters, both of them. I know about the MS. I know why you left. I'm not going to pretend I understand it completely because I don't. I spent 15 years believing you left because you didn't want me. That's a specific kind of damage. It doesn't disappear because I now know the truth, but I believe you. I believe you left because you loved me, even though leaving was the wrong way to show it. I believe you've been carrying this for 15 years, the same way I've been carrying mine, in different directions, same weight. My father died in March, heart attack. He was 52 years old. He was 4 months away from finishing this house when it happened. I finished it. It has an east window in my bedroom because he remembered that I said once I wanted to wake up with morning light. He never forgot that. He built an entire window around it. There's blue tile in the bathroom, a porch with steps my uncle built, a dog named Jasper who sleeps at my feet and belonged to my father before he belonged to me. I'm okay. Whatever you were afraid of when you left, whatever you thought would happen to me without you, I'm okay. My father made sure of it. I'm not ready to visit yet, but I wanted you to know where I am, and I wanted you to know that he built me a home the way you hoped he would. If you want to write back, my address is Lot 14, Miller Creek Road, Ridley, North Carolina. June." She folded it, put it in an envelope, addressed it to the Greenfield Care Center, Kingsport, Virginia, room 212. She did not know if Eleanor was still there. She did not know if Eleanor was still alive. 5 years had passed since the second letter. She sealed the envelope, put a stamp on it, dropped it in the post office box on her way to work the next morning. The metal door clanged shut, and that was that. A letter into the unknown, the same way Eleanor had sent hers. She did not count days. That was the decision she made. She would not count days. She would live inside the days instead, one at a time, finishing the house, working at Alton's, watching Jasper watch the tree line, waking up every morning in the blue room with the east window doing exactly what Ward had promised it would do. The exterior paint took 6 days. She matched the pale blue exactly to the one finished side and rolled it across the remaining 3 walls. Ladder, long strokes, arms aching by evening, paint in her hair for a week. When the last wall was done, she climbed down and walked to the edge of the clearing and turned around. A small house, complete, pale blue on all 4 sides, cedar railing on the porch, 3 solid steps, 2 wooden chairs from a yard sale set side by side, facing south the way Ward had drawn them in the notebook. Big enough for 2 chairs. She had the chairs. She had the dog. What she did not yet have was what came back from Kingsport, Virginia, until she did. The letter arrived on a Tuesday. She found it in the mailbox on her walk home from Alton's, a white envelope, her name in handwriting she recognized now. the same careful, deliberate letters she had seen in both of Eleanor's notes to Ward, but slower, harder one, a hand fighting to form each word correctly. She sat on the porch steps. Jasper sat beside her. She opened the envelope. There were 2 pieces of paper inside. She unfolded the top one first. Dear June, I read your letter 4 times. I had to ask one of the nurses to read it to me the first time because my eyes were too blurred to see the words. She had to stop twice to get herself together. So did I. I'm still here. Room 212, still fighting. My hands don't work the way they used to. This letter is going to be shorter and harder to read than I would like. Please forgive the handwriting. Your father was the best person I have ever known, and you sound exactly like him. The way you write, the way you choose your words. I would very much like it if you wrote again. Whenever you are ready. There is no rush. I waited 15 years. A little longer is nothing. I love you. I have loved you every single day since the morning I left. That has never stopped. Not once. Mom. June folded the letter back on its crease. She sat with it. Mom. A word she had not used in 15 years. A word that had gone stale when there was no one to use it on. She had seen other people use it and had felt the absence of it in her own life the way you felt the absence of a tooth. Sensitive and present even in not being there. Mom. She picked up the second piece of paper. She unfolded it, and she stopped. The handwriting was not Eleanor's. The paper was different, older, the edges slightly worn, the ink a different color than Eleanor's blue ballpoint. She stopped because the handwriting was Ward's, block letters, all capitals, exactly as they appeared in the notebook, in the deed, in the will, in every list he had ever taped to a door or left on a counter for her to find. She read the date at the top. 4 months before he died. Thomas Eleanor had written at the bottom of the page in her own hand in a small note below Ward's letter. He wrote to me every year, 15 years. I kept every letter. I'm sending you this last one because I think you should have it. I think he would have wanted you to. June's hands were not steady anymore. She looked at Ward's letter. She read it. Eleanor, it's the end of September. The bedroom is done. I painted it the color she said she liked when she was 10 years old. She probably doesn't remember saying it. She was looking at a magazine at the dentist's office, and she pointed at a room in it and said she liked that color. She was 10 years old. She put the magazine down and went back to her book and never thought about it again. I remember. I always remember. 4 months, maybe less. I have the porch to finish and the exterior siding on the east wall and the front door, which I want to be solid, not a hollow core, a real door that will hold. I'm going to drive her up here on her birthday. I've been practicing what I want to say. I have it written on a piece of paper in the glove box. I add to it sometimes when I'm stopped at a light and something comes to me. I think she's going to be angry at first because I kept it secret. That's all right. She can be angry. She'll understand eventually why I didn't say anything. You keep a thing quiet until it's ready. That's always been my way. I think she's going to cry when she sees the east window. She still doesn't know I remember about the morning light. She mentioned it once a long time ago, said she always wanted to wake up with the sun coming in. I don't think she remembers saying it, but I've been thinking about it ever since. I built the window around it. I don't know how else to say the things I want to say to her. I never have. You know that. But I can build a window in the right wall facing the right direction and let the morning come through it every day for the rest of her life. I think that is enough. I think that is everything. Ward. June set the letter on her knee. She pressed both hands flat on her legs and looked at the tree line, the pines, the late October light coming through them at the angle it came at this hour. Ward had driven past this clearing every Saturday for 7 years, had parked at the edge of it, had walked up the dirt path, had put on his gloves and opened his toolbox and started doing the next thing on the list. Because there was always a next thing. Because the list did not end until the house was done, and the house was not done yet. He had also sat in his truck at red lights, adding to a piece of paper in the glove box, words he had practiced for a conversation that never happened. June picked up Ward's letter and folded it carefully on its original creases. She put it back in the envelope with Eleanor's letter. She held the envelope in both hands. She had spent 19 years in the same house as this man, eating meals across from him, riding in his truck, listening to him explain how to level a surface and what different types of screws were for. She had known him the way you knew someone you lived with and did not examine carefully because they were simply there, daily and permanent and reliable. She had not known this. She had not known about the paper in the glove box, the words practiced at red lights, the window built around a sentence a 10-year-old said once and never thought about again. She had not known any of it, and now she knew all of it, and it was too late to tell him that she understood, except maybe that was not true. Maybe finishing the house was telling him. Maybe sitting on this porch was telling him. Maybe writing to Eleanor was telling him. Maybe Jasper pressing against her leg right now, the white blaze of his face turning toward her, the way it always did when she was sitting still too long, was Ward's way of making sure she was never completely alone. She put the letters in the envelope. She put the envelope in the pocket of her jacket against her chest. She reached into her other pocket and felt the keys, both of them. Plain brass ring. She looked at the house, pale blue siding, cedar railing, 3 steps solid enough to trust. The east window on the second floor, the glass catching what remained of the light. She had finished it. He had started it, and she had finished it. And between the two of them, they had done what he had always said about any job. You do it right, or you do it over. And if you do it right, it lasts. This would last. She could feel that in the way you felt, things built to hold. Jasper put his front paws on her leg. She laughed. She had not laughed in a while. Not a real one. Not the kind that surprised her. She rubbed his ears, the right one first with its small heeled notch at the tip, then the left folded forward. He leaned into her hands. Ward had found this dog 2 years ago, had left food out every Saturday, had built him a shelter out of scrap wood, had named him. Ward had been building something with this dog the same way he had been building something with the house, slowly, patiently, without announcing it, and then he had left, and Jasper had stayed, had been waiting in this clearing when June arrived, had climbed through the east window on the first night, had decided, the same way the people who had known Ward decided to show up for his daughter, the same way Alton had set aside a can of paint, the same way Bess had walked over with coffee on the first morning, the same way Deke Lane had driven out to check pipes without being asked. Ward had not built a house alone. He had built an entire ecosystem of people who would take care of June when he couldn't. He had just done it in his usual way, without saying a word about it. June stayed on the porch until the light was completely gone and the stars came out, more of them than she had ever seen from the apartment in Garner, more than she had thought possible when she lived in a place where the sky was full of other people's light. Out here, the sky was full of nothing but itself. She unlocked the front door with her key. She went inside. She made coffee on the 2-burner gas range Bess had found at an estate sale. She sat at the kitchen table. Ward's cabinets around her, the butcher block counter sealed with mineral oil, the window over the sink looking out at the dark tree line. She opened the notebook. She turned to the next blank page. She wrote, October 28th. The house is done. Got 2 letters today, both things I needed to know. She paused. She added, going to write to Eleanor again, maybe once a week, see what happened. She looked at that for a moment. Then she added one more line. I think Dad would have liked this. She set the pencil down. She looked at the kitchen he had built, the level cabinets, the window over the sink he had put there because he knew she would stand at that sink someday and want something to look at. She had something to look at. Trees in the dark, a clearing that was hers, a lean-to at the edge of the wood where a dog had sheltered for 2 winters before she arrived. She had all of this. She had the keys. She had the letters. She had the notebook with his handwriting running out at page 23 and hers picking up at page 24, both of them somehow writing about the same house. She had $43 in her checking account. She had a job that paid $12 an hour and started at 7 in the morning. She had a bedroom, painted the color she had pointed at in a waiting room at age 10, and never thought about again. She had a father who had spent 7 years building her a life and a mother who was 3 hours and 40 minutes away and still fighting. She had an uncle who was learning slowly the difference between taking things and building them. She had a neighbor who made her breakfast on Sunday mornings and told her things she needed to know in the plain-spoken way of someone who had been on this earth long enough to understand that clarity was its own kind of kindness. She had a dog sleeping at her feet. She had a window that faced east, and tomorrow morning it was going to let in the light, the way her father had always known it would, the way he had remembered for 10 years that she wanted it to, the way the best kind of love worked, not with announcements, not with credit, just with a window in the right wall, facing the right direction, every morning, for the rest of her life.